The twilight in London's Kensington glowed with a gilded edge, hazy yet exquisite. Inside the climate-controlled conservatory of the Thorne family's ancestral home, rare flowers bloomed in rivalry. The air permeated with a meticulously blended fragrance. 24-year-old Lila Thorne let her fingertips brush a budding iris, its petals edged with a mysterious violet blue, what her father Adrian called the Thorne family's symbol of good fortune. The silver iris necklace against her neck, polished smooth as jade by years of touch, mirrored her first 24 years, flawless, tenderly wrapped in paternal love, without a single crack to be found. "Miss Lila, the guests have arrived," the butler whispered a reminder. She withdrew her hand and took a deep breath. Tonight was her 24th birthday gala. Her skirt brushed the glossy marble floor, reflecting the brilliance of the chandeliers, and her impeccable smile, fit for the heir to the Thorne legacy. The ballroom hummed with elegance and conversation. Adrian Thorne, still refined and handsome at 55, was chatting with guests. Spotting her, he held out his hand, his gaze so tender it could drown anyone. "There's my little princess." He publicly announced his gift, transferring full ownership of the private Thameside gallery Lila managed to her name. Applause surged around her. Lila's eyes pricked with warmth, and her fingers instinctively drifted to the iris pendant at her throat. "The ownership details will need confirmation with Mr. Samuel Harper, our lawyer," Adrian said, stepping slightly aside as a man in a dark suit approached. 30-year-old Samuel Harper, the Thorne family's legal advisor and head of London's top family law firm, exuded a crisp aura of cedar cologne mixed with ink. His expression was as precise as the platinum cufflinks on his sleeves. "Miss Thorne," he nodded, his voice deep and melodious yet distant. "The relevant documents are prepared. We can proceed whenever." His words cut off as a waiter hurried past, his elbow catching the champagne flute in Lila's hand. In the instant the golden liquid threatened to spill, a pair of long, knuckled fingers steadied the glass base, while another hand instinctively shielded her front. It was Samuel. Cold champagne splashed his suit cuff, leaving a dark stain. "I'm so sorry," Lila blurted out, flustered. Samuel adjusted his cuff quickly, as if the momentary lapse had never happened. "It's quite all right," he said, his tone still flat. But Lila caught a flash of concern in his eyes, gone as quickly as a hallucination. "Mr. Harper is always so reliable," Adrian chuckled, smoothing over the moment. His gaze lingered between them, a subtle pause. The gala went on, but Lila's mind wandered. She saw her grandmother Agnes, the formidable matriarch of the Thorne family, sitting alone on a velvet sofa in the distance. Her gaze fixed on Lila's necklace through the crowd, and she sighed almost imperceptibly. Her mother Camilla, the ever-elegant, distant former ballerina, had left early citing a migraine. Her brother Oliver hid in the shadow of a column, complaining to her childhood friend, the Times journalist Ella Bentley. His mouth formed words roughly translating to, "Dad only ever sees my sister." Beneath the flawless surface of this perfect night, tiny cracks seemed to be spreading. Like the champagne flute that had been saved from spilling, the liquid still sloshed, and the chill had already seeped in her fingertips. When the feast ended and the commotion faded, Lila went to the study to fetch documents for her father. Adrian's study smelled of leather-bound books and cigar smoke. Rummaging in the bottom drawer of his desk, her fingers suddenly brushed an unusually thick, old envelope. Hidden under stacks of papers, its edges frayed from repeated handling, it was sealed shut. Scrawled across it in anxious handwriting was, "Graythorne Confidentiality Agreement," with several pencil-erasered question marks beside it, like marks of struggle. Gray? Thorne? A confidentiality agreement? Her heart skipped a beat. The paper felt rough beneath her fingers, carrying the cold of years past. Tea that moment. The antique grandfather clock in the corner of the study struck the hour. The sound was dull and abrupt, startling her. She hastily tucked the envelope back, as if the chime had peered into her secret. "Gray, you're certain you read that correctly?" Ella stirred her coffee, her eyes sharp. They sat in the cafe area of Lila's gallery, with a glittering Thames visible through the window. Lila nodded, her fingertips unconsciously tracing the tabletop. The name means nothing to me. But why would my father have a confidential agreement hidden in his study? Ella paused, her journalist's instincts tingling. I've been investigating former MP Elias Gray lately. He had plenty of romantic scandals in his youth, and later his lobbying firm had questionable practices. She lowered her voice. And there's a rumor he had an affair with a nobleman's wife back then. Before she finished, Lila's heart plummeted. She thought of Camilla's ethereal beauty, of the iris-filled greenhouse her mother kept locked year-round, of her grandmother's half-finished sentences. You don't look a thing like your mother. Instead, you look like who? A ridiculous, terrifying suspicion coiled around her spine like cold vines. She went to see Samuel Harper. Officially, she wanted to discuss the gallery's ownership details. Unofficially, she hoped to pry for clues. The cold marble floors of the law firm mirrored her anxious figure. Samuel's office was minimalist yet luxurious, as professional and distant as he was. The ownership terms are clear. You have nothing to worry about. Samuel pushed the documents across the desk, strictly businesslike. Lila chose her words carefully. Mr. Harper, have you ever heard of Elias Gray? Samuel's pen paused, almost imperceptibly, as he signed his name. He looked up, his gray eyes like a mist-shrouded cold lake. It is a lawyer's duty to safeguard clients' secrets, especially for the Thorns. Some old matters are better left unknown. He paused, his voice lowering. The Thorns are experts at hiding secrets beneath respectability. His words felt like both a prophecy and a warning. The more he evaded, the deeper Lila's doubts grew. Once planted, the seed of suspicion grew wild. A few days later, while straightening Adrian's collar, Lila accidentally pulled out a few of his hairs, tucking them carefully in a tissue. Her heart hammered, torn between guilt and curiosity. The day she sent his sample and her own to the paternity testing center, London was shrouded in thick fog. The milky mist swallowed the old mansion spires and Lila's sense of direction. Standing in the fog, she felt as if she stood on the edge of a great lie, about to tumble into the unknown. The days waiting for results dragged on, thick and heavy. Every second felt like struggling in cold honey. Samuel visited the gallery once to deliver documents. He was still impeccably suited, but Lila noticed the cufflink stained by champagne had been replaced with a simpler style. His fingers brushed hers as he handed over the papers. His touch was cool, while hers burned with tension. Miss Thorne seems troubled lately? He asked, seemingly casual, his gaze probing. Lila jerked her hand back. It's nothing. Just haven't slept well. Samuel studied her in silence for a few seconds, his expression unreadable, before nodding. Take care of yourself. After he left, the crisp scent of cedar and ink lingered in the air. A sourness suddenly rose in Lila's stomach. Only years later would she realize it was the taste of foreseen despair. When the results arrived, Lila sat on a bench outside the center, her fingers trembling too violently to tear open the envelope. The sun was harsh, but she felt icy cold. Finally, she took a deep breath and yanked out the report. She flipped directly to the last page. Conclusion. Based on available data and DNA analysis, Adrian Thorne is excluded as Lila Thorne's biological father. Black words on white paper. Each character felt like a cold needle piercing her eyes, her mind, shattering 24 years of certainty. The world went silent. Traffic, wind, voices, all faded away. Only her heart pounded, booming in her ears. The rough edge of the report scraped her palm, but she clutched it tightly. IT was a lie. All of it. The large hand that taught her to ride a bike, the smile that gave her paintbrushes, the vigil by her sickbed, the fatherly love she'd worshipped was just a well-rehearsed performance. She didn't know how she got home or how she pushed open Camilla's bedroom door. Camilla was dressing at her vanity. Seeing Lila's pale face and the report in her hand, she froze. The room reeked of iris-scented perfume, sickly sweet and suffocating. What is that? Camilla's voice was calm, No hint of emotion. Tell me, Lila's voice cracked. Is Elias Gray my real father? The beautiful woman in the mirror put down her comb and turned around. There was no panic on her face, only cold, almost cruel indifference. So what if he is? You finally found out. That casual sentence was like an ice-tipped knife, piercing Lila's last line of defense. Why tell me now? Lila trembled, barely able to stand. Why? Camilla laughed, a sound full of sneering weariness. Because your noble adoptive father needed a perfect family image. He couldn't stand his wife having another man's child. He kept me around just as a decorative vase, to keep an eye on my disgrace. Overwhelmed by rage and collapse, Lila shouted, And you? You were willing to be a vase? What about Oliver? Does he know he has such a contemptible mother? Camilla's expression twisted abruptly. She stood up sharply, her voice shrill. Oliver? You think he's Adrian's son? What a joke. He's just another mistake. The bastard of that fool Marcus Thorne. Another thunderclap exploded in Lila's shattered world. Oliver, her childhood companion, her brother, wasn't their father's son either? He was her Uncle Marcus's? She stumbled backward, knocking over the crystal vase on the nightstand. It shattered with a sharp crash, water and shards spreading across the floor, like her fragmented life. Once uncovered, secrets crumbled fast. Adrian soon realized Lila knew the truth. He offered no explanation, only a swift, ruthless response. He hired Samuel to sue Camilla in family court for fraudulent marriage, demanding the return of 20 years child support and the revocation of her marital rights. The polished leather sofas in the family division of the High Court seemed soaked with the tears of failed marriages. Lila sat there, feeling stripped bare and thrown under the spotlight. The trial devolved into ugly bickering. Adrian's legal team, coolly led by Samuel, detailed Camilla's infidelity and deception. But under cross-examination, Camilla transformed. She lifted her head sharply, her gaze boring into Adrian. Fraud? You know better than anyone, Adrian. You knew Lila wasn't your daughter 20 years ago. You trapped me in this marriage, threatening me with wealth and power, all to protect your ridiculous pride. Your mother, Lady Agnes, knew from the start. She personally silenced everyone with money and threats. She submitted evidence in court. Copies of emails Agnes had sent to her private doctor years ago, sternly demanding a confidentiality agreement to properly handle any medical records that might reveal issues with Lady Thorne's bloodline. The courtroom erupted. Lila sat in the gallery, her blood turning to ice. So her grandmother was also part of this lie? Even the rare moments of childhood warmth had been laced with guilt and calculation. Then her brother, Oliver, was called to testify. The 20-year-old art student looked pale, his eyes darting. Encouraged secretly by Marcus Thorne, her power-hungry uncle, he stammered accusations of Adrian's years of cold neglect, of pouring all his love and resources into Lila. He never loved us. He only loves his reputation. Oliver shouted, his voice full of the grievance and anger of someone used. Adrian sat in the defendant's seat, his back straight, but his face grayer than Lila had ever seen it. The image of the reliable, mountain-like father she'd known was crumbling before her eyes. Amid the chaos, Ella stood up from the press bench. Holding a recorder, she glanced at Lila with a complex expression before turning to the judge. Your Honor, I have an audio recording relevant to this case and to the credibility of Mr. Oliver Thorne's testimony. She pressed play. Marcus Thorne's oily voice filled the room. That fool Oliver will do anything if we sweet-talk him. Tell him Adrian never saw him as a son. Once he helps us take down Adrian, Thorne Group will be ours. What's there to worry about? Oliver's face drained of color. He stared in disbelief at Marcus in the gallery, who turned scarlet and avoided his gaze. The courtroom fell silent again, broken only by Marcus's triumphant chuckles on the recorder. Caught between her adoptive father's deceit, her birth mother's exploitation, her birth father's, Elias Gray still hadn't appeared, fearing damage to his reputation. Indifference, her brother's betrayal, and her uncle's scheming, Lila felt torn apart. Every breath felt like swallowing the trial adjourned. In the corridor, Lila stopped Samuel Harper as he prepared to leave. Her eyes red, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. Samuel, every time you warned me about the family's secrets, every time you handed me coffee when I was upset, was it all just to follow my father's orders? To watch me? To keep me compliant? Because grandmother paid for your entire law school tuition? Samuel stopped. His shoulders tensed as he turned his back to her. After a long moment, he slowly faced her. His usually calm gray eyes were bloodshot, his Adam's apple bobbing violently. At first, yes, his voice was ragged. Lady Agnes helped me. I promised to guard the Thorne family secrets. Approaching you, confirming your movements, it was my duty. Lila's heart plummeted into an ice cellar, the shards cutting her insides raw. But Samuel looked at her, his expression more pained and conflicted than she'd ever seen it. He spoke through gritted teeth. But later, watching you smile genuinely at the gallery's paintings, watching you stand up for Oliver even when he didn't deserve it, watching you hold your head high even when you were hurting, I couldn't forget you. This belated confession, built on deceit, was like the sharpest knife, carving away Lila's last shred of hope. It hurt more than outright exploitation. So, she heard her own voice, soft as a sigh, cold as ice. When did this true feeling start? When you caught the champagne glass? Or when you stayed up late, revising the legal documents to sue my mother? Samuel's face turned ashen. Lila didn't look at him again. She turned and walked away, each step crushing the wreckage of broken trust and love, heavy as iron. The light at the end of the corridor was bright, but it couldn't penetrate the darkness in her heart. The rest of the lawsuit was equal parts farce and cruel purge. Elias Gray, Lila's birth father, finally emerged under public pressure, but only to hastily distance himself from Camilla. He claimed their relationship had been casual, implying Camilla had been calculating. He even sent word privately, asking to meet Lila, hinting he wanted to use her Thorne connections, even tarnished, and her newfound prominence, thanks to Ella's coverage, to expand his own networks. Lila had Ella send a message back. Thank you for giving me life. But my family is the one I choose. Marcus Thorne was imprisoned for embezzlement and commercial fraud. Adrian, fighting back in desperation, had produced evidence he'd long held. Before going to jail, he actually sent a note to Oliver via a go-between. The Thorne family's money is hidden under the third loose brick in the conservatory. Greed clung to him even in ruin. After the courtroom fiasco, Oliver locked himself in his room for weeks. When he finally sought out Lila, his expression was more complex and ashamed than ever. Sis, Lila only waved him off, too tired to speak. But when Adrian, enraged by Oliver's parentage, tried to throw him out of the house, it was Lila who intervened, securing him a trust fund enough for a stable life. Blood isn't the only measure of family, she told him, and herself. But we need time. The greatest blow fell on Lady Agnes. The scandal shattered her already fading health. When she lay dying, Lila visited her. Sunlight streamed through the hospital window, falling on the old woman's spotted hands that had brushed Lila's hair so gently, now too weak to clasp hers. Lila, Agnes's voice was faint, barely a whisper. We thought hiding it was protecting you, but we forgot a flower with no roots, no matter how beautiful, will wither. Tears slid silently down Lila's cheeks, dropping onto Agnes's dry hand. Why didn't he tell me the truth? Agnes's cloudy eyes turned to the window, as if gazing at a distant past. He was afraid, silly child. He was afraid that if you knew, you'd leave him too, even his fake father, in that moment. Lila suddenly understood. Beneath Adrian's twisted possessiveness, there might have been a humble fear, an unspeakable guilt. He'd thought that by saying nothing, by building a perfect glass conservatory with money and gifts, he could keep the daughter he cherished forever. He never realized that a greenhouse built on lies would eventually collapse without the sun of truth, crushing the most precious flower inside. After Agnes's death, the lawyer read her will. Beyond the bulk of her estate, already transferred to Lila at Adrian's request, his silent way of making amends. She left Lila one special bequest. The old envelope marked Graythorn confidentiality agreement. Inside, along with the agreement, was an old tape. Lila returned to the empty mansion and played the tape on the old recorder in her father's study. It held a fierce argument between Agnes and Adrian from 20 years before. Adrian, younger, angrier. Then get rid of her. I can't look at a constant reminder of my shame every day. Agnes, sharp, firm, be quiet. You want to keep her for your reputation? But this child is a life. A debt to Thornzo. You have to take responsibility. Shouts and arguments. Agnes, finally, weary and bleak, covering up the truth, might save face for a while. But Adrian, remember this. Respectability built on lies will eventually destroy the one you cherish most. The tape ended with a hiss. Lila sat in the study, bathed in twilight, tears streaming down her face. Resentment still lingered, but a flicker of understanding was sprouting amid the ruins. In that moment, the tangled complexity of human nature revealed its painful, true face. Months later, Lila's gallery hosted a special exhibition titled Shattering and Rebirth. The centerpiece was a powerful, large-scale painting, Faceless Family Portrait. It depicted the Thorn family, familiar figures in familiar clothes, standing against the backdrop of the old mansion. But every face was blank. The canvas bore clear marks of tearing and patching. The colors were intense and oppressive, yet through the cracks, faint, stubborn glimmers of gold shone through. The exhibition caused a sensation. People lingered before the painting, whispering, speculating about the storm behind the Thorn name. Lila moved among the guests in a simple black dress, her expression calm and distant. She wore no necklace around her neck. Outside the gallery, under the streetlights, a black Bentley waited. Samuel Harper leaned against the car, in a well-tailored but far more understated suit. The simple silver cufflinks on his sleeves, some recognized them as part of the Rebirth collection from Lila's gallery, glinted faintly in the light. He clutched a white envelope tightly, containing an apology letter he'd written and rewritten, torn up and retyped, never able to send. He watched the familiar yet unfamiliar figure inside the gallery, his gaze complex, filled with unending regret and undimmed emotion. The exhibition neared its end and the guests thinned out. Lila stood alone before Faceless Family Portrait for a long time. Finally, she turned to leave. Her eyes glanced out the window, and across the glass, she met a gaze that had been fixed on her for who knew how long. The air seemed to freeze. London's night, fog rolled in again, softening the edges of the street and blurring their expressions. Samuel stood up straight instinctively, his fingers tightening on the crumpled envelope. Lila didn't pause, didn't move toward him. She continued on her way, as if she hadn't seen him. But just as she passed him, about to merge into the night, the wind carried her voice, soft, faint, like a sigh, like release. Some truths take time to forgive. Her figure receded into the distance, never looking back. Samuel stood frozen. After a long time, he slowly relaxed his clenched hand. The crumpled letter fluttered to the ground. He stared down at it, then lifted his gaze again toward the direction Lila had vanished. London's fog thickened, then thinned. The old irises in the Lybill Conservatory had long since withered, but a new white rose might be waiting in some quiet corner that needed time to nurture, waiting for its next bloom.